welcome to the first ever edition of For the Love of Football, where I talk about the Premier League games from the weekend and give my views on some of the games I saw and the highlights I've seen from the weekend games. Obviously, the first game being West Ham versus Brighton. Actually, Brighton at home this weekend. On the Friday, first game of the weekend. I'm sure West Ham were buzzing from the victory at United the week before, so everyone kind of expected West Ham to win the game, but it didn't happen that way. As we all know, West Ham have lost every single game they played against Brighton in the Premier League, and this wasn't any different. On Friday, we saw Duffy and Donk step up, and Brighton keep their first clean sheet of the season. A very, very massive result for them. They go up the table, and West Ham, again, I don't expect them to struggle this season, but this is one game that you expect their big players to rise up and put in a performance. We didn't see much from the three frontmen who've in the last few weeks rise up to the challenge and basically put teams on the back foot in this game. They had chances, but it wasn't like they had clear-cut chances. They had a few chances where you thought they could or should have done better. And Altovich had the big one towards the end of the game, but again, he didn't take it. And that's Brighton again, probably showing that they're West Ham's bogey team. Then moving on to the 3 o'clock games on the Saturday. Actually, the Tottenham versus Cardiff City game. Again, I wasn't particularly impressed with the Tottenham game. I thought they rode their luck a bit. This was a Cardiff team who haven't won at all this season, and you saw Tottenham kind of struggle and not. Maybe I'm being harsh, but they didn't turn up. Maybe they missed their big players in Dele Alli. They missed Eriksen, Vertonghen. But I expected more from Lucas Moura. I expected more from wings. He had a decent enough game against Barcelona midweek, but this game I just didn't see enough from them going forward. And Danny Rose, they all puffed, but not much. The movement of the ball was kind of slow. I don't know if it's something to do with the Wembley pitch, which looks very dry at the moment. But yeah, it wasn't the performance I expected. I gave Harry Kane my captain in my fantasy league football team, and he ended up giving me one, which I am particularly irritated about. But hey, that was my view on the Tottenham game. Even after Cardiff went to 10 men, they had 20 minutes where they had a chance to really go at Cardiff, but I didn't see anything from them. I didn't see much from the Tottenham guys. And now even the fact that Arsenal's now gone above them on goal difference on the table, hopefully that should spur them on and obviously reignite the North London rivalry. Then moving on to the next game, which was Burnley Huddersfield. Okay, Burnley's been on the up in the last few weeks, and I actually expected them to win this one easily and comfortably. In my Super 6 predictions, I had put Burnley to win that game 3-1. But with Huddersfield, you know what what you're going to expect from them. They're going to they don't have the quality of many of the Premier League teams, but then they're honest in their approach to games. They're honest in their outlook and how their manager sets them up. I know they definitely don't have the resources of all the other Premier League teams, but they every time they turn up, they give an honest account of themselves, and I do feel for the manager, because I think he's a good manager, Wagner. And I think if he was managing a better team, he'll probably be getting more decent results and more decent performances. One of the bigger sides give him a break. Maybe not one of the top sides in the Premier League, but a mid-table team with more resources gives him a team to actually manage, or the resources to an opportunity to manage their team and manage a better side. And let's see what he's made of, because he's a manager. Even with the way he sets up his Huddersfield team, he likes to be on the front foot and he likes to put pressure on teams. But again, the quality of his players and the mindset of his players is obviously it's is way behind the quality and the level that's required to play in the Premier League, and you just see that sometimes in the chances that they convert or the chances created in the games, and how they don't take so many of those chances. Well, then again, they do have one or two better players who could cut it in bigger teams. But hey, I'm an admirer of the work of Wagner as a manager, and I hope he gets a chance or he gets a break to manage at a better side. Okay, moving on to Crystal Palace versus Wolves. Okay, Wolves is a team that has absolutely, I wouldn't say exceeded expectations, because if you're following the championship from last season, you would know that they absolutely dominated the championship. So it's no surprise to me that they've come into the Premier League and they've absolutely taken the same approach, in that they in the midfield they have Neves, and now they've recruited Moutinho, who those are two quality midfielders. They kind of remind me. I know some people have a go at me for comparing them to Iniesta and Xavi at Barcelona, but that's kind of the two I liken them to. They're never too far apart from one another. They tend to know what the other person is doing, and they tend to find one another on the pitch when the players are pushing up front or on the wing. Is either Neves goes or Moutinho goes, and they're never too far from one another in terms of how they approach the game. I did expect Crystal Palace to give them more of a game. In the last few weeks, Zaha hasn't done or hasn't scored or assisted, and it looks like whenever Zaha doesn't do anything for Crystal Palace, they seem to fall short. I expect, with the quality of players that they have and the style of play, you expect people like Townsend to be able to step up in games like this and just try and do things by themselves and try and get more goals for the team. Again, the table isn't looking too bad for Crystal Palace at the moment. They're sitting in 14th position. They've got 7 points from the first 8 games. They've had 2 victories. After 8 games, maybe you can argue that you expect them to be higher up the table, but they're okay, because I don't see the 3 teams sitting in the relegation spots at the moment doing that much or picking that many points during the course of the season. But Wolves, they're sitting 7th, and they've won 4 of their last 5 games and drawn 1 in that time. That's a tremendous result, or a tremendous run of games for a newly promoted side. I don't think in the last few years we've seen any team do that, and it's just that it's a reflection of their manager, the way their manager sets them up to play, the way their manager wants them to play, and they're just going at teams. They're compact, they're very organized, and their right back Doherty, who got the goal this weekend, he's a very, very good player, and I've just signed him in my fantasy league team as well, because I expect big things from Wolves this season. I have 3 Wolves players in my fantasy league team, and that's just a reflection of what I've seen them do to teams this season at Old Trafford. Against United, it wasn't a fluke what they did. They went at United and they got the victory. Against City, it wasn't a fluke. They played City at kind of their own game, and they tried to go at City, and it's refreshing to see that a newly promoted side from the Championship can come into the Premier League and not change their style. They're not sitting defensively. They're not trying to absorb pressure. They're just going at teams, and they're honest in their approach and in the way they are approaching the games, and they're trying to put teams on the back foot. That's very, very refreshing to see. Moving on to the next game, Leicester versus Everton. This is one of those games where I thought before the weekend, when I saw this fixture, I thought it could go either way. Leicester and Everton, for me, are the teams I think are just after the top 6 teams. Either one of them could be the 7th team in the Premier League. Leicester, obviously the champions from a few seasons ago. I maybe expected slightly more from them in the way they approach this game. But then again, they did go down to a very early goal from Richarlison, who again gave a good account of himself. 50 million for Richarlison at the start of the season. I question that. I don't know if he's worth that, but he's trying, and he's obviously one that has shown glimpses of why maybe Marco Silva paid that much for him, or allowed Everton to pay that much for him. Leicester City, I don't know what's happening. I expect them to be more competitive in games like this. But Morgan got the second yellow card, and he got a red card in that game. So maybe that's what just tipped it slightly in Everton's favour. And Sigurdsson scored an amazing goal. If you haven't seen that goal from this weekend, I tell you, please go and see that goal. It was a wonderful strike. One of those ones that I'm not sure he was worth the amount Everton paid for him. But who am I to talk about the prices in the transfer market these days? Players are going for ridiculous amounts, and I guess that's the premium you have to pay for quality in the Premier League these days. Okay, moving on to Manchester United versus Newcastle. Okay, this, if you followed the papers on Friday night, or if you followed the news on Friday night, Daily Mail basically published that this was going to be Mourinho's last game for United, win or lose, and that for me kind of increased the hype. And everyone going into this weekend obviously had the Liverpool versus Manchester City game as the game of the weekend. But in this fixture, this was billed as it for Mourinho, and I was kind of looking forward to see how the United team were going to shape up, how they're going to turn up on Saturday, whether they're going to turn up and try and save their manager's job, or they're going to be lackadaisical in their approach to the game. And in the first half, we saw a United that had no commitment, they showed no desire, they showed they had no rhythm, no tempo to their game. And I was worried. I was concerned. For the first time, I was feeling very, very sorry for Jose Mourinho. In that I know he's an arrogant manager, and I know he's one that not many people like his outlook to things, and the way he speaks about how well he does things. But then again, I know that deep down he loves to win, and he wants to win every single game. I don't know any football manager that doesn't want to win every game. But in the first half, we saw a very weak United side. We saw them no power, no commitment, no desire to go and win the game. And I think it was a reflection of the players that he picked in the first half. And in the second half, we saw a completely different United side. The Mata free kick was obviously a big turning point in that game. In Mata taking that free kick and scoring that goal, it obviously just tipped the game slightly in their favour. But I saw, again in the second half, I saw a passive Newcastle side. People have criticised Newcastle throughout this season. But in the first half of yesterday's game, I saw a Newcastle who showed a bit more endeavour in their approach to the game, in that they tried to even attack. They tried to attack United. Maybe that's going from what they've seen other teams do against United in the last few weeks, and they obviously had that same mindset, and they approached the game positively. But in the second half, it was like they just laid there and allowed United to go at them. They didn't even try to get the ball, and I saw that the manager tried to change things, but again, the players that he brought on contributed to passing or giving the ball away to United very, very, very easily. And the first goal, as I said, changed it, and you saw the United players step up. They stepped up their game, and Paul Pogba started demanding the ball. He started passing the ball. He started spreading the ball, using the spaces, using the width. And we saw Martial trying to go at the Newcastle defense and try to put them on the back foot. They probably could have scored one or two more than the chances that they had if Lukaku had put up his head to basically pick out the right passes, or if Sanchez hadn't overplayed the pass to Lukaku. And I know many people are critical of the United players and critical of the United setup at the moment, but I haven't played football at a professional level, but I know that there is no one that plays football with the mindset of going into a game to lose. So I know, even though you're not on good terms with your manager, regardless of what the situation is, as a football player, you always have the desire to win a game. I don't know any footballer that goes into a game that just wants to sit down and just come and not win. It's not that way. If you play football, you go into the game and you want to give a good account of yourself, and you want to show and turn. I think that was what would have gotten into some of the United players in the second half, in that going 2-0 down to Newcastle, a team that haven't done anything this season. They haven't attacked. They've had the lowest number of shots on target against any other team in the Premier League. So for a United side to be going 2-0 down against Newcastle in the first half at Old Trafford, it definitely would have been Mourinho's last game if they had lost that game 2-0. You don't have to be a United board member for that decision to be clear. But then in the second half, we saw a completely different United team, and I was quite impressed. A bit of the United of old under Alex Ferguson, whereby they never knew when they were beaten, and these guys definitely didn't want to be beaten. And we saw them play for the pride of that shirt, and they played for the pride of the manager. They played for their own pride individually. And the last goal from Sanchez, someone who Arsenal was a completely different player. At United, he started his career quite slowly. I just hope that this could be the turning point for him, in that he begins to get goals and get assists against his name, and the manager can count on him to be one of the players to turn up every week and basically give big performances, because it cost United quite a lot of money to sign Sanchez, and you expect him to deliver the goods. Okay, moving on to the next game, Watford versus Bournemouth. Okay, Watford is my local team, so I have a soft spot for Watford, in that I always want Watford to do well. They started the season positively, getting 4 victories from the first 4 games of the season, and I was beginning or every Watford fan beginning to feel like this could be a good season for for Watford. And in the 3 games, or in the 4 games since, or 3 games since, things haven't gone as well. And yesterday's game again against Bournemouth, who I thought at Vicarage Road should have been a game where Watford win comfortably. If not comfortably, at least give a good account of themselves and the team, and the way Garcia wants them to play and approach games. But no, we saw a Watford side who went down to a very early goal, a very early goal from Brooks, and it didn't get any better, in that Kabasele gave away the penalty. I thought that the red card, or the second yellow, was a bit harsh, and the red card harsh as well. But King, from 2 seasons ago, he was one that shone. Last season he had a relatively quiet season, but again it looks like this season he's beginning to turn up this season. I think he has 4 or 5 goals already this season. In comparison to last year, where he didn't get as many goals from the games he played in. Okay, saying that he was injured for a fair bit of the season, and obviously the last goal from Wilson. The game was pretty much over in the first half. 3-0 down, Kabasele off. You're playing against 10 men for the entire second half. Watford it was a disappointing game for me, from a Watford perspective. But Bournemouth, again, Eddie Howe, good manager, probably one of the more underrated managers in the Premier League. He sets his team out to be on the front foot in games, which sometimes makes them lose certain games that you think they probably should go on and win. But yesterday was one of those more positive ones where you saw what the manager expects of his team, and they did deliver on the day. Moving on to Sunday's games, the first one of the day being Fulham versus Arsenal. Okay, and I know the manager wants them to be positive in the way they approach games, and wants them to go at teams. But I think it's one of those ones where you need a balance. You need the balance between attack and the balance between defense. At the moment, they just don't have it. They haven't gotten it right at all, and they miss loads of chances. They miss. If you see the number of chances that they missed throughout the course of the season, at least from the games I've seen, they're goals that you expect teams to be burying. They've hit the woodwork a number of times this season already, and that's obviously telling in terms of their position at the moment. They're just sitting above the relegation zone. I hope that they don't find themselves in the relegation zone. I hope that they just do enough to stay up. For me, it's between them or Newcastle as the last team that might just beat the drop. I don't like saying this, but I feel like Huddersfield and Cardiff would have a very, 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 very long season, and I those are my first two picks to go down. And I think Newcastle or Fulham might just be the other team to go down with them to the Championship at the end of the season. Again today, Fulham they tried. I wouldn't fault them for endeavour, especially in the first half. They tried to go at Arsenal. They had a goal, but then I think the fitness of the Arsenal team under Unai Emery, you're just beginning to see some of the impact he's having on the training field in the Arsenal games. In that they don't tire in the second half. They've won all their games that they've won this season, in most of the games that they've won in this season in the second half, and it just shows that they're not tiring as they did under the old manager. A lot's already been said about the Arsenal mentality under Wenger, but one thing I've definitely seen is the work rate, and when the players lose the ball, the minute they lose the ball, they start chasing. Under Wenger, I didn't see that much chasing from Lacazette or Ozil. I know Ozil didn't play today, but the players that played, Welbeck, we've always known about Welbeck's work rate, but people like Iwobi, he's trying a lot harder under Emery, and you can see that translating into the way they apply themselves in the games. And obviously with Torreira coming into the midfield alongside Xhaka, I've been impressed. Not only has he helped Xhaka's game, he's settled the Arsenal defense as well. In that they don't panic. One thing that Arsenal lacked in the last few years is a defensive midfielder who knows how to read the game, who knows how to read danger, who knows how to assess danger. In that when your team's attacking, when your defenders step out, you step into the position that they vacated, and that's literally what Torreira does. In that when either of the two centre backs push up, or either of the wing backs push up, he automatically slots into that position. And that's why in the last few years Chelsea have been so good in the way that they've competed in the Premier League, in that they have someone in Kante who's naturally naturally gifted at reading the game and understanding and reading danger. And in Torreira, Arsenal have found a player similar in style and in approach. He's very energetic. He goes in to win the ball. He can see a pass, and when he loses the ball, he wants to win it back immediately. And obviously the number of errors in Xhaka in the last two games is slowly reducing, and you can see no one's ever questioned Arsenal going forward. It's always been in the defensive areas. Can they have that person who in the midfield who's very very good at reading games? And from what I've seen so far in Torreira, I know the manager has eased him into the games because obviously he had the World Cup run with Uruguay, and the team's beginning to see the benefits of having him in their side, and that all the other players around him are beginning to tick, and you can see the Arsenal front line in that the pressure isn't on them as much. And they all seem to be enjoying their football now. They all seem to be wanting to play for one another. They all seem to be wanting to run and wanting to chase teams down, hunt in packs, and put teams on the back foot. And it's very refreshing to watch. I love listening to the guys on Arsenal Fan TV, and it's good to listen to the more positive comments this season in comparison to the last few seasons. It's been refreshing to see an Arsenal side who don't want to lose, who don't know when they're beaten, and 5-1 was maybe in the first half 5-1 wouldn't have done, isn't a good reflection of what the game had to offer, but in the second half they definitely deserved the 5-1 victory. I guess some of it came from Fulham tiring and also the fresh legs from the Arsenal bench, in that if you're able to bring on Aaron Ramsey and Aubameyang from the bench, that's a good set of players to bring off the bench. And Ramsey's flick for the second goal, that was a world-class finish, and the debate is going to continue to the end of the season. Should Ramsey stay or should Ramsey go? Should the team or should Arsenal do more to try and convince him to stay? We wait to see what happens on that one. Then moving on to the second game of today, Southampton versus Chelsea. Southampton was at home in this game, and Hazard, everyone's player of the season so far. Before this game, he had 6 goals already in the Premier League. He sits high above everyone else in the scoring charts. I've been one who in the past I have definitely questioned Hazard's return on goals, in that he hasn't, for me, in terms of the number of chances he has had in previous seasons, and then the output. By output, I'm only looking at his statistics of goals and assists. In terms of challenges faced, tackles received, he always tops those stats every season. But I've always wanted to see more from him, and people comparing Hazard to the likes of Ronaldo, Messi, I've thought no way. There's no way you can compare him to those guys, because those guys season after season they score 40 goals, they score 45 goals, and I haven't seen that from Hazard. He's best return probably around the 15 goal mark. So this season I'm hoping it's the season where he goes on to score 20, 25, 30 goals, even 40 like Mo Salah did last season. I'm hoping that this is the season, because he's playing with a newfound freedom under his new manager, and all the Chelsea players seem to be buzzing under Sarri. I read some of Cesc Fabregas' comments during the week. He had really positive things to say about the manager, and he's saying he's playing with a newfound buzz that he wished he found earlier on in his career. So it seems like there's a newfound unity and a few newfound excitement amongst the Chelsea players, and I hope that they can obviously continue to push on because if you follow the Italian league, Napoli started the season very, very well last season, and towards the end of the season they began to tail off, and obviously let Juventus win the season again. I hope the same thing doesn't happen to Chelsea this season. I hope they press on and they continue to give a challenge to everyone's top two, or most people's top two at the start of the season, being Manchester City and Liverpool. But again, going back to the game, Southampton Chelsea, I thought before the Chelsea goal, Southampton had two decent enough chances to take the lead. I thought Ings should have scored the one that he had, which went over the post just from outside the goal. And that's football. If you don't take your chances against these teams, and they get a chance, they bury 9 out of 10 times. 10 times they tend to bury those chances, and that's literally what Hazard did. And that was 1-0. Then the second obviously came from Ross Barkley, and the third just in the last minute of the game, or in the last few minutes of the game, from Morata, someone who struggled this season. I thought was a decent finish from him for a striker who's low on confidence. And again, it's a 3-0 result for Chelsea, and they sit joint first on the table with Manchester City and Liverpool, which takes us to the Manchester City versus Liverpool game. Liverpool obviously being the home side, this was billed as the game of the weekend. This was billed as the game that gives us an insight into who's ready at this point in time to be the self-proclaimed champions of the Premier League. But watching the game, it definitely didn't feel like the top two sides in the Premier League. Both teams gave the other team too much respect. Listening to Jurgen Klopp's interview after the game, he used exactly those words, that it was two teams who respected one another's style of play, who respected one another's approach to football, and the two managers on show, Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp, are two managers that are well revered in the game. And you could see why, in that the way they set up their teams, they set up their teams to be on the front foot. But at the same time, you could tell that the players didn't want to lose. Man City being more cautious than they normally are, which is fair enough if you recall the defeats that they had against Liverpool last season. They were heavy defeats, so they definitely wanted to be compact. They didn't want to leave any spaces behind the lines, and to give the Liverpool strikers any chances or any opportunities to run in behind. So if you watch the game, you would have seen that the City defenders sat in very close to their box, and they were very compact. They didn't leave any spaces for Salah. Firmino didn't have any spaces to run in through the lines. Mane didn't have any spaces to run in through the lines. Wijnaldum didn't have any spaces to run deep from the midfield as he normally does in games, and it was a very, very good organizational structure from the Manchester City setup. And Liverpool likewise, I thought today they missed Alexander-Arnold, in that sometimes he from nothing, the way he whips the ball in from right back, he just creates chances. And they didn't have that in Gomez. He's a different type of player, but they did miss him today. I'm not saying that if he played that would have been the difference, but hey, you never know. City had the chance to win the game in the end. They had the penalty, and it looked like, I know that some of the reporters are reporting that Mahrez demanded the ball to take the penalty. I don't think that was the case. I don't think that was the case. It was obviously, and it was clearly, a decision that came from the bench. in that I think the bench informed Mahrez to take the penalty, and Mahrez went on to miss it, and that was it. So overall, it was a fair result for both teams. I don't think either of the teams did enough to win. It was a lapse in concentration from Van Dijk, which gave the penalty away in the first place. I overall, it was a fair result. I can understand why both teams were conservative in their approach and the way they approached the game. They didn't want to end up on the losing side. They're level on points. They're joint top. Manchester City obviously leading on goal difference because they've scored way more goals than Liverpool. But then this week maybe we're just beginning to see the frailties in the Liverpool team, in that they lost against Napoli in the Champions League, and they've come in against Manchester City, a game where they haven't had many shots on goal. They haven't had any maybe they had one shot on target throughout the game. Or maybe two actually throughout the course of the game. And against Napoli, if you recall, they had no shots on target in the first half. I can't really remember the second half if they had any shots on target. But the front line aren't as potent as they were last season. Obviously, Salah looks like he needs a break. He looks like he's short on confidence, and maybe just giving him 1 or 2 games to maybe come off the bench and be an impact player might help his confidence as well. But you never know. It could backfire in that he could start throwing tantrums on the bench. But hey, thank you for joining me on this session of For the Love of Football. It's been great being the first one. I hope you enjoy my analysis, and I will be doing another video after the international weekend. You can follow me on Instagram at ForTheLoveOfFootball. That's my Instagram handle. And subscribe to my YouTube channel, For the Love of Football.